We started, by the way, now.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
That'll work then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll see the chat. You'll see the chat come up on the side, but I can enter into the chat
Perfect.
from StreamYard. But if you wanted to do it, you'd have to have YouTube open somewhere else. So make sure you mute it if you do that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can pop up, pop the chat out on YouTube, and then close down the YouTube window, which is so it leaves the chat open, but the video stream is off.
There you
so
go. Didn't know you can do that.
Yeah.
There we go. First lesson.
surprising.
First thing to learn from making waffles. Yeah.
See, there's always something to learn. There's always something to learn, especially in the makers community. There's always someone who's got a good idea about something.
Yeah, well, it's either that or it's, hey, come here. There's a rabbit hole there. Do you want me to push you down it? You're like, yeah, go on then.
Well, funny you should say that, because
which rabbit hole have you got to? I know which rabbit hole you've just joined.
Yeah,
Dave.
Well, I don't. So do spill.
So for me, so I always say I'm a creative maker, right? Because I don't think I particularly excel at anything. I just like to give everything a go. Do you know what I mean? And I've done a lot of stuff, but there's been one thing that I've avoided. So Alex, when I met Alex at Makers Central this year,
that's Alex Strassing.
Yeah, so she got me onto Discord, and it just proves that you can teach an old dog new tricks, because I think I've grasped it a bit. You'll probably differ, Andy, when you say no, because you keep putting the same message on a million times. but I've been on there, and it's amazing the amount of people that you can just ask a question, and you get not. It's not that you get the right answer, but it's just you get an answer in the way that you kind of ask the question, if you know what I mean. So you're not bombarded with loads of details that you go, yeah, I didn't understand any of that. But
you can get that too if you like. You can get that level of detail if you're not careful.
But I think everyone's really good at gauging the knowledge level, the existing skill base, based on the way the question's asked. You know what I mean? So I'm asking a lot of the time. I'm asking very basic questions. Well, recently, so as Andy says, there's a particular rabbit hole that I've avoided for a long time now, and that's 3D printing. And I said, it doesn't interest me. I spend all day on a computer. I don't want to do it at night. It's just, I've got no interest in it at all. I said, and I've always said the same thing. I can totally see the benefit of it for jigs and workshop type stuff. And I don't mean to offend anyone in case I do, but I don't get the whole, happy birthday, Khuz. Here's a picture of us from Maker Central in a 3D printed frame, because it looks crap. It's plastic. It doesn't appeal to me. Do you know what I mean? But oh my God, it's blown my mind. Absolutely blown my mind. So for the workshop, so I'm reorganizing my workshop, and because I've got a lathe and I do some wood turning, I've got a load of chucks, and there's these little plastic things that you can screw your chuck onto. So and they just fit on the wall. So all your spare chucks, you can just screw them on and screw them off when you need them. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So somebody gave me one a good 18 months ago. I think it was Fletch, actually, from Smelly Cat Creations. He gave me one. And, I used it, and it was brilliant. And then while I was reorganizing, I sort of messaged Dave, the Mole Valley maker, and said, hey, don't suppose you can help me out with these? Yeah, sure. So when I said, oh, I'll look into it, and I'll let you know what I need, because there was a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted. And I said to him, I didn't realize you did 3D printing. Yeah. He said, it's brilliant. I do this, I do that, And then he started telling me about it, and I'm sort of like, yeah, I've avoided this for so long. And he's like, oh, mate, it's great. And anyway, long story short, I've ended up looking at the printer that he's got, and I thought, God, it's only 180 quid. It's like really cheap, It's like by the time if you buy one of these pieces for like, I don't know, I think they sell online for like 10 quid or something. If you buy five or six of them and a few other bits and bobs, before you know it, you've spent the same money anyway. So I thought I could just buy one. Oh man, oh my days. So here's my thinking on it, right? I think it's brilliant. I can't believe how intuitive it is. Now, I've had messages from like Chris Smith saying that I missed out on all the best parts of it, where I think, like any technology, the early days is the sort of exploratory stuff, right? And that's where people are experiencing all the issues that sort of go wrong, Yeah, so I've just noticed. I can see the chat now. So yeah. So Mark's right. So Steve Kerville does it. He prints a lot. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's great stuff. It's really good stuff, but it's so like literally. And I've got to the stage now where if I showed you my workshop, there's 3D printed stuff all over. I've only had the printer a week, but I tell you how much I was blown away. Right. So I got this printer. It was delivered on the Thursday. Within 20 minutes, it was set up. Really easy to set up, like screw 2 bits together, and that was pretty much it. Within half an hour, I was already printing the little test print on it, So then I'm going through the website, downloading all these attachments for storage. I've got this thing about storage, organizing workshop and stuff like that. All these hooks and chuck things and blah blah blah, and then I start looking at Tinkercad, and I've kind of messed with Tinkercad in the past. I've done a bit of SketchUp and stuff like that. I'm designing stuff. Oh, mate, it's blown my mind. Absolutely blown my mind, I have to say.
I had the same kind of attitude when I first came across 3D printing, and I was like, I knew it existed and I knew that it was a thing.
Yeah.
The thing I didn't realize was it was accessible, and it was something that you could just do. And then I started, I think I needed a printer part or something. I can't remember. I was doing something, and I thought, you know what, I'll use the 3D printer. So I knew how to use Fusion 360 to an extent. So I did what I needed to do in that. And suddenly I was able to print something that I needed bespoke to this particular situation. And I'm like, and it cost me like 10 pence to do it. And I could iterate on that design over and over again until it was absolutely spot on. And now suddenly it was. And it's that ability to just literally, you were talking about workshop organization, where, you can get tool organizers for walls and what have you. But sometimes, they're designed for like 6 screwdrivers or, a certain number, and you've got 9 or 12, and it's like, well, I need 2 of these. But actually, you can go into Tinkercad or your 3D modeling software of choice, design your own thing, and away you go. The Hackspace that I'm now a trustee of, / director, mostly, actually refer to it as legally culpable for, I think it's more appropriate. I've started putting up IKEA SCADIS boards in there and using the 3D printer to just design and print tool organizers. And it's been brilliant because it's just, we need organizers for pliers. Away you go. And it's dead easy. And that's one of the beauties of it. And I think for some of the stuff like the Chuck Buddies and what have you that Mark mentioned, but organizing your workshop for doing jigs and all of this stuff, it's absolutely the right tool for the job. It's a lot. Yeah, there's a learning curve, but at the same time, if we didn't like learning curves, we wouldn't be, Dave, you do wood turning. That's got a higher learning curve, I think, than 3D printing. This is where Andy and Dave both disagree with me. So.
No, I think the key is what you said earlier about it being one. I think it's way more affordable now than it ever
Yeah.
was. So you're not spending hundreds or thousands of pounds on printers. You could, but
Yeah.
you don't
Oh yeah,
have
you definitely can. You definitely can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you don't have to. Do you know what I mean? And the other
Yeah.
thing is, I think, like you said, it's more accessible because you could. I mean, I've had people asking me about it, and friends are saying, "Oh, you know, is it easy to do?" I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's easy to print stuff if you just want to print stuff.
Yeah,
You know
you
what I
can
mean?
grab
Yeah.
some more Thingiverse. If like you
Yeah.
say,
Yeah,
setting up a lot of printers now, probably most. Like you say, it's 10 to 20 minutes of assembly,
yeah,
and normally that's just down to the way they package it.
yeah,
And it's less than 10 minutes. Yeah, tend to be. I'm thinking of some of the more expensive ones, like the bamboos, where you've kind of got to. Basically, it's about removing the internal packaging and the stuff they put inside to stop the gantries shifting around. You take
yeah.
that out, you plug it in, switch it on, add some filament, and it's ready to print in less than 10 minutes. Yeah, so it is possible to be even super quick, but they're considerably more money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It's an extra zero on top of what you paid for the basic one, but like the sort of price to performance is like it's not sort of linear. Like the more you pay, the better the performance. It's not necessarily that. It's a lot of you can get by with a lot for that 180 quid printer that you mentioned. You can do a hell of a lot, and if you do end up going production style, then then you can justify it. But yeah, I mean that's one of the great things about Hackspaces.
it's really
So
it's really interesting. I mean, I'm trying not to get distracted with the comments, but it's interesting. Like where Mark's sort of saying it's not something I will ever own, and I think you're absolutely right. With when you go, you'd be surprised because I honestly, if you'd have spoken to me 6 months ago, I'd have said without a shadow of a doubt. I've been saying it for years. It's not for me. It don't interest me at all. But now I've got one, I can totally see the benefit. I can also see, if I'm honest, I can also see a little bit of end game. So I can see there's going to come a point. I mean, it's literally sitting here, but there's going to come a point where I'm going to go, yeah, I don't use it as much. Do you know what I mean? I
mm,
mean, I printed off one of these articulated dragons. So it was like a
mm,
Yeah,
dragon, sort of skeleton
prints in
dragon.
place and then it just flops around.
Yeah, exactly. And I printed one of those off for my granddaughter and a train for my grandson because my wife's gone up to Doncaster to visit them. So she's taken that up with them. I don't envisage I'll be printing off a huge amount of that sort of stuff because the kids will be like, "Oh, great! Can you print this? Can you print that?" Yeah, but it takes like 6 hours. So
mm.
do you want to come back tomorrow? Because yeah, you ain't gonna get it done in the next 20 minutes. By which time they've forgotten they wanted it anyway. Do you know what I mean? But I can totally see the benefit, and I think, like you said, Cuz, the next thing is you're going to be sort of going, actually, I need a specific piece. I need that
Yeah,
piece. Can I reproduce that? Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like
yeah,
threefold, isn't it? It's like you say, pull the stuff down off printables or Thingiverse or whatever it might be. Just pull the random stuff down that people have already done. Then there's the sort of design your own bits to suit a purpose, and then there's that really specific. I need to start repairing, a bit like Morley does, because Morley did all
Yeah,
that where he'd set up those
yeah,
little like the he had the mobile unit, didn't he?
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He
The
did.
repair shop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And people would go, "Oh, I've got this, this coffee maker, but this little switch thing's broken off of it. Yeah, leave it with me." And boss, he'd bang it all out. And I think, God, that's brilliant.
exactly. I mean, that kind of thing. Where in terms of like repairing, like I think we're all a fan of old tools as well, like old machinery, and sometimes this old machinery from the 1960s, you take it apart and you realize there's a little plastic piece that you need. And it's like, I can reverse engineer that and 3D print it in a material that's probably better than what that original plastic was. And
Yeah.
that ability is just, it's wonderful. I am a big fan of 3D printing and the abilities that it offers as a just the capability it offers, and like you say, for the accessibility and the cost of to get in, Jesus, it's a tool that you can sit there.
That's it. That's
and
that's a big plus, really. I mean, because it is the sort of thing. I mean, I've talked before about kind of, I came from a maker family. Yeah, we always had making gifts at Christmas. Yeah, there was always something to make. Yeah, that was given. Yeah,
Do you mean like
there would always
airfix
be,
or something? Or
yeah, but a variety of things. Yeah, whether it was, I had a marquetry set one year. I've still got the fret saw that came with it.
oh
Yeah, so
wow,
literally cutting out things. The fret saw, it's a perfect, it's a proper fret saw. Yeah,
yeah,
13, 14-inch throat. Yeah, it's not one of those tools I use very often, but sometimes, yeah, I mean, I've got a scroll saw, but sometimes you need to take the saw to the piece. So
yeah,
yeah, it's still something I keep. Yeah, and it's more than 40 years old. But it's perfectly serviceable, and it's as good as any fret saw you'd buy today. And yeah, it's suitable. So there would always be things like that. Yeah, whether it was an Airfix kit or whether it was a kit to make with matchsticks or kind of a scraper foil type things. And often there would be multiple things when I was a kid, and that was always kind of a. And it's still something we do with our kids. Yeah, it's like they always get something to read, they always get something to watch, they always get something to eat, they always get something to make. Yeah, we have sort of a set of things that. Well, my wife has this list. She's very good at kind of making sure that they get something from every little category on this list. But it is the sort of thing, a 3D printer, with the costs that they are now. I mean, if you go back to the early days when Chris Smith was playing around with 3D printers, when there was a lot of tinkering with the printer itself, and a lot of the hobby was about getting the printer to work and not burn your house down, and getting it tuned in for the different materials. And there wasn't great software, and it wasn't as intuitive to use. And the machines came in. Here's the 3,000 parts that you will need to make this machine. Here's the PDF that's you're going to have to work through over the next 3 weeks to get this thing together. That those days. I mean, you still can get kits like that, but mostly now it comes in a box. You might have to put 3 or 4 bolts together to hold it in place, and they'll work within, like you say, within 10, 20 minutes. You've got something working. So it's the sort of thing you can give to a kid. Particularly if you haven't got a garage or a space, it's the sort of thing you can give to a kid. They come in all sorts of different sizes. They get from 8-inch or 5-inch build deck to a foot, and cubic and bigger. You can sort of go, right, look, here's a 3D printer. It's going to sit on your desk. You can have it in your room. If you're doing a filament 3D printer, unless you're playing around with some of the exotic filaments, there's no real issues with the fumes. If you're doing resin printing, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing filament, it's the sort of thing you can give to a kid for a couple of £100, which I know is a lot of money for some people, but it's not a huge amount of money considered. Having worked with kids for many years, after Christmas, some of the kids will be getting like thousands of pounds worth of presents. But it's the sort of thing you can, for a couple of £100, you can give something to a kid that will give them the opportunity to fall down one of those different rabbit holes, whether it's just download everything from Printables and Thingiverse and all those different kind of other repositories, or whether it's actually I've got this other hobby and I like to make stuff for this hobby, and this now will let me do that, or whether it's just this kid's really creative and they can take Blender, which is free, and they can make little monsters, and then they can print them out, and then they can paint them, and they got their own little monsters. Rather than kind of buying stuff from sort of Game Workshop and printing Warhammer 8,000 or whatever it was. I'm not really into
that. So this has always been my thing. So I sort of said that, and the weird thing is, I only sort of started making stuff about what we in 23, probably around about sort of 2017, something like that. So only about sort of 6 years or so. But as soon as I started, it's like a light bulb went on, and suddenly I look at stuff now. I don't always have the ability to do it, but I can see the idea. Do you know what I mean? I'm not very good with plans and stuff, so I don't draw stuff out. But I'll have an idea in my head, and I would see something that people might go, "Oh, that's just a crap bit of wood or a block of resin or something," and I'll go, "Yeah, but if we did this and did that, and before you know it, it's turned into something." And the funny thing is, I've always said, I think once you open that sort of creative thought process, I really do feel like it's transferable skills. I feel like it sort of opens up a whole new way of thinking, this sort of almost logical thinking and a process mentality that can actually be applied across all manner of areas of your everyday life. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why it would be really good if more kids were to get into it. I mean, I remember when I was at school, we had sort of, woodwork and all that, but I don't even know how much of that they do these days. Do you know what I mean?
Varies a lot. It's quite a controversial topic potentially. There's a lot of people who say they don't do any, which is not true. But although it is potentially true in some schools, so it varies massively. It's woodwork and metalwork aren't as prevalent as they were once, but of course there are other things now that I mean, when I was in school, electronics wasn't really a thing. I mean, electronics existed, but there wasn't a subject to electronics.
But it's very much a generational thing, though, isn't it? Because like when I think back to when I was at school, it wasn't until sort of probably quite late in secondary school where we started to do a bit of computer stuff that was very, very basic, obviously. Do you know what I mean? But but the problem is, like, nowadays, everything is that sort of, well, it used to be like they used to call it like the MTV generation. Now it's just you look at any aspect of life, it's all it's going to seem ironic, but it's all YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. It's all quick fire, get it done, get it, everything's available. You can order it online within 10 minutes. You've got it, all that kind of stuff. But it rubs off on everything, and there's no incentive or no interest from a lot of the younger generation these days to get involved in that sort of creative area. But like I say, I'm not saying it's the same for everybody. There's always going to be exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, it's quite the opposite, actually. That whilst the kids are interested in your Instagrams, your YouTubes, etc., if you give them the opportunity to get their hands dirty and to build stuff and all the rest of it, they are absolutely up for doing it. Like, they are 100% behind doing projects and practical skills. The trouble is that it's the opportunity that needs to be there. So your Instagrams, your YouTube, etc., that is just there. It's available to them. Whereas a 3D printing workshop isn't necessarily easily available. A woodworking shop,
Yeah, I mean, it's 3D printing in schools is actually quite tricky because of the time it takes with a conventional bed slinger. Yeah, the things like the bamboos, the high-speed printers, has made life a lot easier for schools, but they're so expensive, a lot of schools can't afford them.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the I mean, I've heard it a lot with doing what I do, where they're like, "Oh, kids are just interested in Instagram and this, that, and the other." I'm like, no, because every child who's come into the hack space, and granted, it's a niche market, so I'll give them that, but also every child I've come across at exhibitions and so on, and Maker Central. Look at Maker Central this year, where they had all of the kids getting involved. They were absolutely up for the challenge. If they prioritized Instagram over actually getting their hands dirty, then they wouldn't have gotten involved. But they were getting involved. And I think it's opportunity, and this is where, your hack spaces and maker spaces come in. And, I'm biased because I'm part of the maker spaces. But and the same goes for men's sheds as well. These facilities exist, but not many people know about them, and not many people shout about them. And I think also, I think and I know for me personally, I find it difficult to do projects with my little sister, for example, because I don't know what is appropriate in terms of her skill set and what I can do. And also, I have no patience, so I'd end up yelling at her and she'd sort of start crying. So, there is that. But it's, like I say, I think if you give the children opportunities and work with them, absolutely they will get involved. I have no doubt about that from what I've seen. But that's, as I say, I think where we view it from is different based on our experiences. My experience is different because of what I do for a living and what I'm involved with. Your experiences will be different based on your perspective, and Andy, same again. And you'll see it from a slightly different lens being a retired teacher. So
I think that's right. I think the main thing is to give the kids the opportunity, because, like you say, there was plenty of kids at Makers getting involved, and there is every year. But it's a very small percentage of kids that could do it. Do you know what I mean? Like if you look at the amount of kids that go to Makers, there's not a single one that's disappointed with it. But how many kids are there that get the opportunity to go to Makers? There's not that many out there that probably even know about it, because not everyone's got a parent behind them driving them to say, because the majority of those kids, I know there's some there that go there for the event, but the majority of them are going because they're with their parents, and the parents are the ones that are doing whatever they're doing, and then they kind of go, oh yeah, and they're, you learn from your you learn from your experiences with your family and that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, yeah, at the same time though, we have a couple of parents at the Hackspace who have no interest in making. They've said themselves they aren't very they don't do much in terms of hands-on stuff. That's not their niche. But their children are interested in it. And they signed up for their kids. And their kids have been absolutely loving coming to the Hackspace, getting involved with projects and all sorts of other weird and wonderful things. And they drive it. The kids drive it themselves. They just go ahead and do whatever. That's the wonderful thing. I mean, it's a great thing to see. And again, like I say, my experience is different because of being involved in the Hackspace and being involved in the education side of AMSAT and all of the stuff that I do at work. So it's seeing that. It's, like, as I say, I think we need to be, like, in the UK in particular, create more opportunities for the kids to get involved. But at the same time, it costs money.
It was always the sort of thing that probably would have ended up evolving out of a youth centre, but then they did away with, like, you don't see youth centres anymore. Do you remember when we was kids? You'd go to a youth centre and there'd be like, a little tuck shop where you could get 50 pence worth of crisps and sweets and crap and whatever, and then they'd have a bit of indoor football, or there'd be another room that was playing music or some rubbish like that. There was always something going on, ping pong, table tennis or whatever it might be. And it's kind of like the next progression of that, the evolution of youth centres would have ended up being, I guess, like youth related sort of maker spaces and stuff like that, but they're few and far between. It's such a shame, because it's a really good opportunity. And like I say, it's not just about teaching young kids how to make stuff. It's about teaching them a new skill set and a new mentality. It's that mindset. Once you open that mindset of how to think about, like you say, creating something, reverse engineering something, making something yourself, it's all about problem solving and solutions, and that can only better them in their future life. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I think part of it of that mindset is realizing that they can do it. They can do this thing, because so many people, and this is adults as well, they'll go into something and they'll be like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I haven't done this for years. I'm not able to do it. I'll be awful at it. And then they go ahead and do it. And it's like, oh yeah, actually, my skills are a little bit rusty, but I'm all right. And it's remembering that actually you have that capability and that you can do stuff, but you just sometimes need that practice and the muscle memory to take over. And suddenly it's like, oh yeah, actually I am able to do it. And it's how once that confidence starts to build up, you begin to feel like, oh yeah, I can do a lot more. And then you go into something else where you're not too sure about. You build your skill sets, and then so on and so forth. And it's why we like and again, I think it's this maker mentality that we have of, oh, this is interesting. Let's have a look at it and see where this rabbit hole leads. And people don't like jumping down rabbit holes, whereas makers are the total opposite. It's like, oh, there's a rabbit hole. Let's jump down there, and I'll take my friends with me.
But you know why? Because what you've done is you've already unlocked that creativity in yourself, and you've gone, hey, look, listen. I mean, I've got my main workshop where I've got like all my woodworking stuff, chop saws, pillar drill, the lathe, all that kind of stuff. But then I've got another shop at the side of the office here, which is my resin workshop. So that's where I do all the resin casting. And behind that, I've got another little space where I do metalworking. So I've got my forge and all that kind of stuff. So when I melt aluminium and copper and all that kind of business. And I do craft shows, not a huge amount, but I do craft shows throughout the year. And a couple of times I've met people at craft shows who've got really interested. And I would much rather give away something to somebody that gets it, somebody that's really interested in how that product came about, than sell something just for the sake of making money. The selling of it is like the second, the sort of the byproduct, if you like. Do you know what I mean? It's just okay, yeah, it's great, but that's not why I do it. What I do is I do it to promote the creativity and that making and all that. And I've talked to them for hours, kids and stuff, about how stuff's made and how a pen's turned or a bowl's created or whatever. We were talking earlier about Chris. I don't know if Chris will probably remember this, but Chris he sent me a thing in the post. It was a lithophane, and I never knew what they were. Do you know what I mean? But when I got it, it was like, oh my God, that's me. And he like 3D printed this image, and I thought it was brilliant. And I used to take it. I used to have a little wooden bowl that I'd turned, and I'd put it on the table when I was doing my craft shows. And then when the family had come along, you could always see the kids were bored, rigid, of walking around mum and dad. And I'd go like, hey, do you want to see something cool? And I'd go into this bowl, and there'd be like, my cousin used to do metal detecting, so I had some Spitfire bullets that he dug up out of a farmer's field somewhere, and a couple of Roman coins. And I'd be saying, look, hold that coin's a couple of 1,000 years old, and all this kind of stuff. And then there was some the palm presses, like the lead sort of palm press. Have you seen those? It's like a round, there'd be like a stone or like I say, a bit, and it was round, and it would smooth, and it would go into the palm of your hand. And they used to use them for pushing needles and stuff through.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was all stuff like that. And then I'd get this lithophane out, and I'd say, look, what do you think of that? If you hold it up to the light, and there was this picture of me, you could clearly see it. And it was what Chris sent me. But I'd talk to, and you could see the kids was amazed by this stuff. And they'd go over and get mum, come and look at this. This is brilliant, And then you'd start talking to about, and my whole shtick around my craft shows is not the product. I'm not selling you a product. I'm selling you the story around the product. So everything. So if somebody buys a pen off of me, the pen comes with a laminated card that says what the wood is or what the materials are, and the sort of size they grow to, what area of the world they grow in, all that kind of stuff. Just gives them a bit of information, so that then when people go away and they pull out their pen, they go, oh, Khuz, that's a nice pen you got. Yeah, did you know this is actually London plane, and it was planted in Victorian times, and the bark used to absorb a lot of the pollution and all. Do you know what I mean? All this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then people go, bloody hell, really? Yeah. And it just becomes a talking point. But all of that sort of stuff is what leads people down that route of falling into those rabbit holes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's get that like what you've just said there. It's like, yeah, that's so. It's it resonates so much with people when you get to hear those stories and learning about, why they do what they do and how they've done it and the story behind that particular item. I think that is such a powerful tool to not just get people interested, but also to actually get people to reassess sometimes and to reevaluate their perspective on life. Because
Yes.
sometimes it's, again, it's going back to that point of everything's so fast and quick, and it's, you can go on Amazon and you can buy 50 pens for 50 pence or, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And there's no story, there's no history, there's no love behind that. But when you speak to someone who's taken the time to make this pen, and there is a love and a passion instilled in there, and there's also a story behind it, that hits on a different level. And, I say I'm not a sentimental person. If someone said to me, "Are you a sentimental person?" I'd automatically say no. But then at the same time, I have a whole host of different little trinkets kicking about in various places that I have kept because they mean something to me.
Yeah.
And that is like finding
It's
things that actually
sentimentality.
exactly precisely that. So it's whilst I say I'm not a sentimental person because I don't think I am, the actual fact is I am. And that sentimentality is what makes us individuals as humans, and that is what connects us with other people. I mean, on my bookshelf over there, I've got your keyring, Dave, and your card that you gave to me over. No, you posted it out to me because you'd run out at Makers Central.
Yeah.
And you wound up posting it bloody well out to me. I remember that. And I remember thinking to myself, what an absolute gentleman of a human being that guy is for going to the effort. And I was just like, yeah.
But you know what? It's funny because when I do the craft shows, I've probably had, I can think of at least 4 or 5 youngsters sort of like, I think the youngest, I think was about 12, 13, came round with their parents. And funny enough, his mum actually had a stall at one of the craft shows I was at, and I got chatting to her, and she was like, "Oh, my son would love to." And I said, "Hey, you're welcome to come round." And they came round, and I ended up making a pen. So they ended up like I was showing him, "Look, this is how you do it." So he had to go, made a pen, put it all together, and by the end of it, he had this pen. Oh, that's brilliant! There you go. You can keep that. You've made your own pen, sort of thing. And then I did one again about 2 years ago. I had 2 brothers. A year ago, last year, I had 2 brothers come round, and they did it. The first kid that I did, I swear to God, I was doing a craft show not 12 months ago up the road from me, and this guy came up with a few pals and stuff. Oh, hey, how you doing? Chatting away, and I'm like, sorry, I said I'm really bad with Nate. Do I know you? Yeah. Don't you remember? I came round. Like the guy's like 18, 19 now. I mean, look completely different. I'm like, holy crap, I didn't realise, And he was saying, oh yeah, it was brilliant. I've never forgotten it. I've still got the pen and all this kind of stuff. These 2 young lads last year, they came round, they spent a Sunday here, made a pen each and all that. Next thing I know, I'm getting texts from their mum saying, what was the stuff that you put on the pen when you'd finished it? What was this? What was that? All these questions. Sorry about all the questions, but the boys really want to try and get a lathe and start making their own pen. And I'm like, hey, that's fine. Go get this, get that. And I said, look, you don't need everything, but this is the basics. You can get started with it. And I just think, how many times have you heard people say knowledge is power? Knowledge isn't power. Knowledge isn't powerful. It's only powerful if you share it. If you share knowledge, then it becomes powerful because suddenly that's 2 people. It's that whole, if you teach a man to eat fish, he'll eat fish once. If you teach a man to go fishing, he'll eat fish for the rest of his life. Do you know what I mean? And it's that kind of mentality. So when you start looking into it and you say, actually, okay, it might be very simple. I know how to make pens. Well, that's great. I can make pens and I could sell pens to people who want to buy a pen. like you say, Cuz, the amount of people I get who say £65 for a pen, that's a lot of money. And I go, it's fine. It's not for everybody. I appreciate it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
People who use a pen typically appreciate a nice pen.
Mm.
I've
Yeah.
made tons of pens, tons and tons of pens, and I could tell you personally, I don't like that kit because the pen's too fat, it's top heavy, it's not really a good balance, you know, But people like what people like. But I always say to people, it's not for everyone. If people say to me, well, I can go to the pound shop and get 10 for a quid, that's fine. Go do
Go to
that.
the pound shop and buy 10. Yeah.
You're just not my market, but that's fine. I understand that. You know, I wouldn't go out and spend £40,000 or £50,000 on a car because to me, I just drive a car. You know, I've got I've got a car that it works and I like it. But it's fine to not be, you know, into it so much. I don't expect everyone to be into it, but as soon as you start sharing that knowledge and then people start doing the same thing, you can see that you've unlocked something in them. And then if they pass that on to someone else, it's like, what is it they say about? It's something like good news and bad news and 7 people or something. And if you do something bad, they'll tell 7 people and they'll tell 7 people, and you know what I mean. It's that kind of effect, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a positive multiplier effect, basically.
Yeah.
You tell 3 people, they then tell 3 people each, and so on, and suddenly you have this chain who have all passed on knowledge, and again, it's how we continue to evolve and grow, by sharing that knowledge. I used to say, I still say that knowledge gained and not shared is knowledge wasted, because you have to pass it on. You have to share your experiences, because ultimately, what's the point otherwise? It's great. Yeah, I can 3D print stuff. Okay, cool. I can 3D print stuff. I can also teach someone how to 3D print their own stuff, and then they can teach someone else how to 3D print stuff. I can use woodworking machinery and metal lathes and milling machines, etc., and then teach someone else to do it, and they teach someone else.
I'd start to disagree, because you get into the realm of almost saying, if you learn something, you have to share it, you have to pass it on. I think potentially you don't have to necessarily share it, but perhaps you should be using it. Or of course, you may learn something and then go, yeah, I know about this now, and that's not for me.
Yeah,
because I don't think everyone can teach.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Not everyone wants to teach, but some people, people need to learn stuff so that they can then use it, and I think then that's just as powerful if they've learned something and then they're using it and there's something coming from it. But I don't think necessarily has to be everyone teaches. I mean, in some ways it would be great, but knowledge would be passed on very, very quickly, and we would perhaps move forward as a population.
I think it's a very difficult thing to do, isn't it? It's easy to, like you say, to give you a good example. So when I have people round to the workshop, I could literally talk all day and engage you in every piece I do, every stuff, every tool I use, and I could show you how to turn a pen, or turn something or create something that you'll walk away at the end of the day and go, I made that, that's brilliant. However, I can also drive a car. I wouldn't teach you how to drive a car because I just wouldn't be able to do it. Do you know what I mean? So I think you're right, Andy. I think there's one thing to know how to do something, but to be able to teach that skill is completely different, and it's not necessarily applicable to everything.
Not all people can teach. Not all people can teach all things.
Absolutely. I could teach you how to make a pen. I wouldn't want to teach someone how to turn a bowl or to do something like that. Do you know what I mean?
That makes sense.
My daughter comes up quite a lot though, and she'll come up and she'll say to me, she'll have an idea. She'll do a lot of resin casting with me and stuff like that, And she's got this thing in her flat. She's got this this ivy stuff, this sort of fake ivy that goes up and over the door frame. And I've got a load of, I went through a phase of buying silicone molds. I've got tons and tons of different silicone molds, and I had all these butterfly molds, and we'll sit there and we've used loads of different techniques. So Wendy from Toonpish, I saw her where she mixed the mica powders with the alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and then paint that into the mold. So we've tried all that. We've dusted them. So we'll do all this. But my daughter will sit there for hours with me, and we'll color all these molds. She's made all these butterflies, and she's got these butterflies now dotted around this ivy, and it looks brilliant. It looks really, really good. So then tonight she popped in tonight. She dropped her fella off at home, and she said, "I'll pop in on my way through, Dad." She lives down in Crowborough now, and she stopped off, and I said, "Oh, have you eaten?" And I said, "We'll order pizza in." So we've had a pizza, and we was chatting and that. And she said, "So have you printed stuff?" I said, "Yes." So I showed her in the workshop what I've printed. She said, "I wonder if we can get some bumblebees." So we're looking online, and I found this bumblebee that was a 6-minute print. I said, "Yeah, let's whack one of them out." So we printed it out, and she went, "Yeah, I think that might work." She said, "What I'll do, I'll take it home, I'll measure it up for size. If it's good, then we'll." So the next thing I'll be doing is jumping on the Discord saying, "Chris, what paints can I use on these?" Because I said I haven't quite worked out. She said, "Oh, I suppose everything you print now has to be black, right?" And I said, "Well, it does at the moment because that's all I've got." I said, "But I think you can change colours." I said, "I haven't quite got that far with it yet. I don't know too much about the other materials."
I was going to say you've got the rabbit hole of different colour filaments, different types of material filaments.
Well,
then there's the changing filament partway through a print in order to add colour. Then there's you run the risk of kind of going, well, there are now Bamboo, for example, are now selling they're a very cheap printer for them. I mean, their normal starting price is like £700 or £800 for their sort of open one, but they've just released a new, essentially what they're kind of calling a almost beginners 3D printer,
right,
which has the optional. I can't remember if it's optional or comes as standard with it. A 4-color module, so you can load 4 different filaments in, and it will print multicolor through the printing process.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
if Jamie was here, he'd be talking about kind of the N+1 principle, where N is the number of printers you have, and N+1 is the number of printers you're going to have.
About his, I'm going to nag Jamie about his what was it, his Fusion 360, because I know he said, "Oh, you need to start." When I looked at it, I thought, yeah, this is probably the kind of thing that I didn't want to get into it for, because it's very deep. And I mean, I do think it's a massive learning curve, and I'd like to be better, because Tinkercad, I think, is great for me because it works, but I can already see its limitations, and I think using a better CAD software. But I know it sounds stupid because they kind of go hand in glove, but I want to be able to 3D print. I don't want to learn how to program a computer software. Do you know what I mean? It's not that part of it that really interests me, but I can also see without that part of it, you're always going to be fairly limited as to what you can produce,
Yeah, I mean, Fusion 360 there is a learning curve to it, and there's some really good courses online that you can do, and they'll get you started. If you don't want to jump to the depth of Fusion, Onshape is a free open source ish software that's available on the web, on its website, and it's open source, but everything that you create is also available to anyone else. So it has its own repository, so people can take your model and then modify it. If you don't want it to be obvious what you've made, put a really obscure file name on it, and no one's going to find it.
That's not going to stop some people from kind of thinking, if you worry about kind of people borrowing ideas.
That's what Tinkercad does, doesn't it? Every time you start a new design on Tinkercad, it just gives it this completely weird random name. And I think the problem is I forget to name it sometimes. So then when I go back to sort of, I'm going to put it on the memories, the flash card or whatever it is, the micro SD. I'm going to put it in there, and then it'll come up with a menu, and there'll be like 4 or 5 things on there with all random names. And I think, I can't remember what the hell it was called now, and I've got to go back to the laptop and work it out.
Yeah, as I say, Fusion is it's a nice, capable bit of software, but over the past few years, they've really scaled back what you can do with the free license. Whereas on Shape, you can do enough with to get you going as a step up from Tinkercad.
To be fair, Fusion 360, what was available was actually kind of fairly mind blowing, and the capability of the things it could do, and there were people taking advantage of what they could do and using the free versions rather than actually paying for a commercial license. So, the fact that they did start scaling it back was not really a surprise. A bit annoying to a lot of people who were using it in a hobby way. Fine. I mean, one of the sort of things that Jamie's talked about recently is that he thinks the way some of the courses on CAD don't necessarily approach things from a way that makes it intuitive to someone who's maybe not got a CAD background. So he's been sort of talking. I mean, during lockdown, he did a Fusion 360 course with a bunch of us, which was very good, and kind of took things from base of some of us had a little bit of experience, some people had no experience, and basically going like making sure we were aware of terminology, but also thinking about how to construct things from kind of thinking in for being ready for 3D printing, because that's what most of us were going to use. Not many of us on that at that time had CAD CNC machines where that would be a thing to use. I mean, there are so many packages. It's tricky to get the right one. We're at we've talked for about 50 minutes now. I'd like to maybe start looking at our attention grabbers for this week before we dive off into the after show. So attention grabbers, those are things that have been grabbing our attention, whether it's things we've been reading, watching, doing, whether it's something in the sort of near past or currently or into the apart from currently, we're sitting here, present tense, past. You know what I mean? Kind of, something we might be working on sitting on the bench next to us, or whether it's things that we're working towards in the near future. So it can be a bunch of things. Dave, what's been grabbing your attention lately?
Well, I was thinking about
3D printing, of course. Well, 3D printing is obviously.
I was thinking about it.
Spent ages talking about that.
3D printing, definitely, but no, I'm still watching, or I found I'm watching way more YouTube than I've ever watched at any point. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Probably more so than I actually watch TV nowadays, I think. But there's a guy on YouTube called Just BS Woodworking. I still watch a lot of the regular ones, but Just BS Woodworking, and I really like it. He's a really nice guy, and I think the reason I've been drawn to it is because it feels like where a lot of us all started. Do you know what I mean? So he's just a fairly small channel, trying to build up his following and all that. And the projects he's doing, he's like, by his own admission, he's not an expert in anything. He's just a guy having a go, And it's just brilliant. And I think I enjoy that learning curve as much as you can watch, like the bigger channels with all the tools, all the machinery, and all the skills. It's also nice to watch it from the other end, where you go, oh, there's someone that's having a go that's not really sure how to do it. I kind of guess, touching on what we were talking about earlier, Khuz, where part of it's sort of like it's problem solving. It's like, look, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but I think this might be one way to do it. You know what I mean? And he's just going to do laser cutting, and
nice.
It's again, that's definitely not something that I'm going down and.
I mean, in fairness, you've kind of gone a bit of a weird way, because normally, well, I say normally, what we've seen previously is people go woodworking, turning, then to CNC, then laser. Well, CNC or laser, one or the other. Then to 3D printing. Whereas you've just gone wood turning and woodworking, general tinkering, to 3D printing. You kind of skipped a step, so you'll have to go back and do the middle bit as well.
I don't know if I agree with that, Khuz, because I certainly from the position I've sort of been in and people I've seen, and if you kind of the maker communities are, and I've talked about this a lot, the maker community is so diverse and it's so varied, and there are different kind of angles to it, and I think to a certain extent, there's a lot of us perhaps in kind of our bit of the community, that often come from a kind of the woodworking sort of side of things, not necessarily kind of furniture making, because I think that's another branch. If you look at like some of the American sort of YouTubers, there's a lot of furniture makers. But then there's also, and if I think back to kind of when I first discovered the maker community, which is over 10 years ago now, where it was predominantly from almost like the Make magazine side of the maker community, which although there were people talking about wood and stuff, it was a lot of people making robots, a lot of people doing electronics, a lot of 3D printing, and people kind of going into there, and wood was something that might get used, but because it was the frame for the 3D printer, not necessarily because it was actually kind of that woodworking was the thing. I mean, obviously, if you're of a certain age, wood was material. There's a lot of woodworking in my background because there wasn't access to plastics in the same way when I was sort of younger. At school, literally there was a woodwork room, there was a metalworking room, there was a pottery stroke technical drawing room, there was a home economics room, and there was a needlework room.
That sounds like a wonderful hack space.
There were 5. I mean, it would be nice to have that building. Actually, it was multiple. It was in different blocks.
Oh, lovely.
Some of those, and it was great space. I mean, schools do make. If you can get an old abandoned school, Lockerbie Men's Shed, meeting the old Lockerbie Primary School, and so that's a great kind of place to, because you have that ability to section things off. Which I mean, like, Dave, you've got sectioned off areas for different aspects, and that's something quite jealous of, because it's like great to have a room just for metal and a clean room that you can do your resin in, and you haven't got to worry about sawdust because that's in a different room.
And that's why, that's exactly why we did it, because it wasn't working for me just having the one space. It was just getting way too crowded, and like you say, you can't cast any resin without getting everything covered in sawdust.
And that's it's just problematic, isn't it? You're doing things like that.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I think there are different. I think there are different routes. There isn't a classic route. That's I
mean, I was just
saying where you're starting off on, and depends on what you're interested in. Because I mean, local to me, there's a modern railway. I'm not sure if club is quite the right word. I'll call it a club because I can't think of a better word right now. It's a modern railway club. They have essentially a unit on an little industrial park. It's not a big industrial park. It's not big kind of warehouse type things. It's when it's kind of just it's on a farm, and the farmer said, right, I'm going to build some small, essentially wood cabins. I think there's one kind of what you might refer to as a industrial unit where it's kind of corrugated steel sides, but the rest of them they're wood cabins. There's a variety of things there. There's electricians that have a place there to store their gear and things. There's a couple of other kind of makery type things. There's an ironing service, and the local modern railway club have a fairly decent sized space actually, where they've got stacks of permanent setups. Yeah, and for them, the love is model railways. But of course, in a corner they've got a little workbench and they make stuff, and I'm darn sure that there's been some 3D printing and laser cutting to make some of the stuff that's there.
Yeah.
When I've only been along once when they had an open day. It's so for some people, a device like a laser cutter or a 3D printer is just a very specific tool to do a very specific job.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder, and we've talked about this a little bit, whether actually there's perhaps a measure of the neurodiversity that might perhaps exist. Some people will have model railway is my thing, woodwork is my thing. Some people seem to be able to focus just on one thing, but then there's some others that just kind of like, I love a CNC. Yeah, I love a CNC. I'll learn how to do that. Yeah, a 3D printer. Yeah, I love that 3D laser cutter. Yeah, I love one of those. Yeah, and then resin, I'll do that. And
that is me to a T. I've got a Triton TRA 001 router, the big heavy router. That's boxed up, sitting in the conservatory, been there for probably going on almost 3 years, maybe. I've got the metal craft setup that they were selling.
The cold forming stuff. Yep.
I've got all of that, the whole kit. That's still sat in the workshop. I've not got that out. I buy so many tools that I think, oh, that's brilliant. I'll definitely need one of them. And then I get it, and I don't use it for. I've got this idea of a router. So the router table set up. I've got the Craig plate. I've got a big wooden workbench in the middle of the workshop. I want to put the Craig plate in it with the Triton router mounted underneath. That will be my router table. But because I've been sat on that for at least 2 or 3 years and it's not been done yet. The other week, I picked up one of the lumberjack router tables set up.
Yeah.
I picked up one of them. I thought, oh, that might work. And it's like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but it's almost like impulse buying. I've got leather working stuff. Candles. I had to go at making candles once. I thought that seems like fun. Let's make some candles, And I'm just, I'll see something and I'll go, oh, that looks really good. I think I'll give that a go. Like I don't know if you saw Evan and Caitlin when they were melting glass in the microwave and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, that looks. I showed my daughter. I said, "Hey, look at this! I reckon we could have a bash on this. That looks really cool." But you kind of almost have to. I think it's that lack of discipline. You know what I mean? Because you need to go. No.
Yeah. So you say, Dave, it might also be adult ADHD. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, or any of those other neurologists. I'm certainly not a medical person and able to make any sort of diagnosis. But
if it makes you happy, if it makes you happy, that's what someone said to me the other day. If it makes you happy, just do it. And I was just like, no, I can't just do that. That's a dangerous recipe.
What's been grabbing your attention?
So my attention has been firmly fixed on my 1-year-old baby sister. Well, I say 1-year-old. She's 1 in 2 days' time. But it was her birthday party today. So I was at a fun shack with loads of screaming children trying to not go insane. And she's not been very well either, bless her. So I did then go into Smith's Toys, where the toy shops are available. And I may have gone a little bit crazy and saw 3 items are like, oh yeah, that'll do. Oh, that'll do. Oh, that'll do. But yeah, she's not very well, bless her. I don't know if you heard any crying in the background. She's in the next room. But
oh, bless.
Yeah, she's very much firmly had my attention. Aside from that, technical stuff, work stuff, and becoming director of the Hackspace a couple of weeks ago and being involved in all the management side of things is a whole new different beast. We had a power cut, so it's like, oh yeah, our server decided to go down and not start back up, so we had to scramble around to find a key holder, and now I actually have a physical key for the Hackspace now as well. So if it ever happens again, we have backup solutions in place. But yeah, Andy, what's been grabbing your attention?
Sounds like a UPS might be in order. Yeah.
Oh, we have a UPS. This is the thing. So the power cut happened, and it shut the server down. And then when it rebooted, because the CMOS battery inside the server hasn't been replaced, it didn't flip to the new BIOS settings that it needed to, and as a result, went to BIOS settings that didn't work. So it needed to flip back over and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Don't you just hate it when that happens? The old them BIOS settings. Oh, God. Oh, don't even get me started on that.
Andy, what's been grabbing your attention?
Me, a couple of things for me. Some the eagle-eyed amongst those watching might be able to work out that I have a slightly different desk. There are no more concrete blocks holding up a piece of plywood. So I now have a larger area on the upper standing desk. Next stage, I do have a piece of old worktop. I need to now make a slide out, but finding the right slides, that's the tricky bit, underneath, so I can actually have a sitting desk as well if I want. So kind of working on that, hopefully for the next couple of weeks. The other thing that's been grabbing my attention over the last few weeks, now I haven't watched tonight's yet, is Britain's, I can't remember if I've mentioned this already in the last couple of weeks, attention grabbers, Britain's Best Woodworker, with friend of the show, Leo, who hasn't been on from Hand I Craft, hasn't been on yet, but at some point I've had a couple of conversations with him about having him on. He's got through last week. He did very well last week. So definitely rooting. It feels odd though, and I think I mentioned this before. It feels odd because he knows how far he's got. And it's kind of like if you know somebody that's in something like that and you wish them luck, it seems a little bit odd, kind of to sort of wish somebody luck when they know actually how far they got.
Yeah.
You can't change how they did. Do you know what I mean? It's just like
yeah.
I mean, he could. I mean, I haven't watched this evenings yet. He could be out already.
Yeah,
because it's on Sunday night at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I think I've been watching that, and honestly, it's a word that's used a lot, sometimes maybe overused, but inspirational. For me, ever since I first met him in 2018, Chris Fisher is just, it blows my mind. And to see, I was sitting there with the wife the other night, and I put on the second episode because I typically record it and then watch it on later on, and we put it on, and I was saying, oh yeah, you know, this is Leo, and he lives up in Formby, and da. And then I started telling her, but I don't know if you've seen the videos where he's building his own workshop and all that, and it's just phenomenal. And it's all that there, but for the grace of God go I, and all the rest of it. But you kind of look at it and think, and I know everyone says it, but I honestly don't think I could be like that. I'd love to think I could, but to just sort of go, you know what, it sucks, but I'm just going to get on with it, and I'm going to learn how to do everything with one hand. I can barely do what he's doing with two hands. You know what I mean? I couldn't. Yeah. Like my mum says to me, "Oh, why aren't you on that program?" I said, "I'll leave it out, Mum. I couldn't do all that, you know."
Here's the extra rub to it. He's not just doing it with one hand. He's doing it with his non-dominant hand.
Yeah.
While also being in chronic pain.
Yeah.
And that's the other side to it. Yeah, because if you follow him on Instagram, he's had this implant to try and help him with the chronic pain. It's made a huge difference. But he's only had that implant in fairly recently. So particularly while he's on the show, which was filmed actually last year, that's I mean, for anyone who doesn't understand chronic pain, just imagine imagine the worst headache you've got, because just headaches, everyone's get a headache, but the chronic pain may be in a different part of the body, but just that's permanently there. And you've got to get on. You can't just I mean, yes, so people who have migraines, yeah, migraines can be debilitating completely. You can't get out of bed. Yeah, sometimes with a migraine, etc. But for some people, that amount of pain is what they experience on a day-to-day basis, maybe in some other part of their body. And trying to do that, yeah. I mean, yeah, hats off to the guy. Yeah, he's producing phenomenal work. Yeah, he did exceptionally well in the second episode. Yeah, I mean, he's up against strong competition. Yeah, the guy who got Star, I can't remember if they call it Star Builder or whatever, but yeah, the guy who kind of won last week, yeah, deserved it.
Yeah.
And it would have been a tough act to beat. But yeah, he wasn't far behind.
So here's the question: who's gonna go further? Is it going to be him or Joe? Because how far did Joe? I'm trying to think how far Joe went into it, because Joe lasted a
last 5.
Yeah, and I think they're down to 8 at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, they've lost 2.
Lost 2. Yeah,
one guy, one gal, well, one man, one woman.
So it'd be interesting. Not creating a rivalry or anything like that. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a bit of friendly rivalry. I'm sure Joe wants Leo to get further than him, because Joe is just, who he is, and he's a lovely guy. So he'd probably be like, "How would you get better?"
Yeah, I'll talk a bit more about this in the after show. So we'll end this now because we've done our attention grabbers. So for those who have been listening, yeah, this is the main show. If you want to hear the rest of the conversation, and we'll talk about Joe and Leo and some of the others in the after show. If you want to get hold of the after show, then you need to sign up on. I was going to say Maker's Waffle. No, it's patreon.com/Maker's Waffle, and then the after show is available as an audio download for people to listen to this podcast. And we normally go somewhere between sort of 45 minutes an hour. Just very slightly, so being a total of about sort of 2.25 hours. So the same length as the shows used to be before we had the after show, on average, because there's no consistency. But you can find it there, and you can hear a bit more of the chat. But yeah, sometimes there are secret things, sometimes there aren't. But yeah, hopefully we'll try and keep it interesting as we go into that. So we will. Dave, I almost forgot. Yeah. Jamie here to remind us things. Dave, where can people find you if they want to find more of your works?
So I am probably most active on Instagram, Dave.gdesigns. I've got a small YouTube channel, but I don't really upload to it now. So mainly it's on Instagram.
Cool. And that's JG Designs. Yeah.
Yeah. Dave Designs, that's me. And I think as well, just before we go, just to say that I'm conscious. I've read a lot of the comments, but I couldn't respond to any of them. So all the people, I saw Claire pop up and Andrew and everyone saying hello, hi guys. Sorry, I wasn't being rude and completely blanking you. I mean, yeah.
I think most people understand that. Yeah, it is tricky to keep on top of the comments and things. Yeah, I sometimes miss some as well. But yeah, the conversation's the key thing here. So we will say goodbye to folks, and we'll see you next week. So bye, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers, all.